2004 through 2015 Toyota Tacoma inner and outer tie rod replacement. I'm Brian Eslick from How to Automotive. I'm going to walk you through the steps of replacing that. To get started, you're going to need to get the front wheels off the ground. If you're at the shop, rack it up. If you're at home, use floor jacks and jack stands and jack it up from the frame. So you can go ahead and remove the whatever side you're working on, remove the wheels. So in this video, I'm trying out the Milwaukee M18 Fuel mid-torque impact gun for the first time. So far, I'm really liking the power and the size and the versatility of the tool. I believe it's going to be much more versatile versus the high torque version. Now that we got the wheel off, we're going to loosen up the jam nut here on the tie rod. So you're going to take a 22mm wrench and you're going to rotate it counterclockwise to loosen the nut. So now we need to remove the cotter pin. On my vehicle here, the cotter pin is rusted into the tie rod and it will not come out. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to cut it off or break it off where it's flush, and then what I'm going to do is hammer on a socket. So even though that the cotter pin is still inside the bolt here through the little castle nut, I'm just going to take a socket like this, a 19mm, and hammer it onto it, and I'm going to use the Milwaukee mid-torque impact gun here, and it has more than enough power to rip this bolt off. And as you can see here, it was no match, the mid-torque impact gun. Now to get the tie rod free from the spindle, I'm going to take a 2-pound sledgehammer here and hit the end of the spindle right here, and that'll pop the tie rod out of the spindle. And to make it a little easier, I'm going to turn the wheel fully to the right since I'm working on the passenger side. If you're working on the driver's side, you'll turn it fully to the left. That gives you clearance to make a good contact with it. It may require a couple blows like this, but it will pop out. Now we're going to spin the outer tie rod off by turning it counterclockwise. And when we do this, we're going to count the number of turns until it comes all the way off. So that way when we put it back together, we'll count the number of turns rotating it back on, and that'll keep our alignment in the ballpark. Once you get the outer tie rod off, now you're going to take the jam nut off here. Mine's kind of rusted on, so I'm just going to use the Milwaukee the mid-torque here and just spin it off. So as I hit the trigger on the gun here, it spun the whole tie rod, so you're going to have to put a wrench on it and back it up, or a pair of vice grips and hold the tie rod. Now that you got the jam nut off, now you can take the clamp off the end of the boot here by squeezing it and pulling it off. After that, we're going to take the inner clamp off, and the way I like to do them is just get a long screwdriver and put it on the edge of the clamp, and we'll smack the end of the screwdriver with a hammer, and that'll just basically break the old clamp off, and then you can pull the boot off. So like I said, I'll put the tip of the screwdriver on the clamp, give it a whack, and then that'll break the clamp. Then you can take the boot and just pull it straight out towards you. You can maybe give it a little twist and pop it right off. To get better access to remove the tie rod, I'm going to go ahead and remove the skid plate here. So it's going to be held on with 4 12mm bolts, and you're just going to remove those bolts and lower the skid plate down. After that, we're going to bend the little metal safety tabs on the tie rod here. So you're going to use a little punch or a screwdriver like this, or pry bar that you're designed to hit, and you're going to smack the end of the little safety tab here, and that'll bend the tab backwards. And then once you get the tab bent out like this, then you can put a wrench, or what I like to do is put a pipe wrench on it, and then you're going to need to back up the rack and pinion. So there's a little slot on the gear here that's made where you can put an 1 1/16 wrench on it. Then I'm just going to use a pipe wrench and fit it around the tie rod. Then I'm going to rotate it counterclockwise while backing it up with the wrench. That way it doesn't twist the rack and pinion. And then once you get it crack free, then you can go ahead and just spin the tie rod all the way off. Once you spin the tie rod all the way off, you'll see how the little safety tab works. It'll stay on there. And so it fits in a little groove and then bends over the tie rod to help keep it from backing back off. So here are the part numbers for the inner and outer tie rod that I used on this job. I will link these up in the description of the video. That way if you need to pick them up, you can find those there. So I like to put a little bit of red thread locker on the end of the threads here on the tie rod. That's like a little glue to help prevent it from backing back off. So you're going to put the little washer on the tie rod with the little nipple sides pointing outward. Then you'll screw the tie rod in all the way till it seats flush onto the rack and pinion. Then you're going to use a pipe wrench like this, and rotate it clockwise and back it up with an 1 1/16" wrench until it's nice and snug. Now with a ball peen hammer, you can hit it right here on the end of the tabs and bend those back over, and that'll prevent the tie rod from screwing back off. Now you can reinstall the boot and slide it all the way on until it fits into the little groove that's on the tie rod. After that, you can slide the clamp back on, and then you can take the jam nut and you can screw the jam nut back on. And so you'll screw it back into position to where it's about where it used to be. Then you can screw on your replacement outer tie rod, and you're going to count the number of turns and match it up to the amount of turns that you took it off with. So I'm counting as every time it gets all one full revolution, that counts for 1. So I'm spinning it back on to where it's back in the ballpark where it was when I took it off. So now I'm going to take the tie rod and slip it back into the spindle. And to do this, you may have to push the ball joint portion of it inwards a little bit to help create the angle to where it'll slip right in there. So I bent it over a little bit and then put it on. Now I'm just using my mid-torque impact gun here to run the bolt down, the nut down, and crank it down till it's tight. And then I'm going to put a new cotter pin back in. So you never want to reuse an old cotter pin when you're doing these. Put a new cotter pin back in. Once you get it in through there, you'll just bend it over and then cut off any excess. After you get that installed, then you can go ahead and tighten up the jam nut. And after you got the jam nut nice and tight, then you can go ahead and put the clamp here back over the boot. And then once you get the clamp on over the boot, the next step is we're going to turn the wheel back to the opposite way. So I have it turned fully to the right since I'm working on the passenger side. Now I'm going to turn the wheel to the left, and that's going to bunch up the boot and make it easier to slip it on. So I'm going to come around the back side like this, slip the boot on over the rack and pinion. Now I'm just going to use a zip tie. It has a little groove in there where it won't allow it to slip back off. So with a zip tie, it's all you really need to secure the boot. So go ahead and put a zip tie on there and cut off the excess. Now you're ready to reinstall the wheel and tighten that down. After that, you can go ahead and put the skid plate back on. And that'll complete the job of replacing the inner and outer tie rod. I will link those both up in the description of the video. That way if you need to pick them up, you can find them there. Also, I'll link up the mid-torque impact gun that I used. I'm Brian Eslick from How To Automotive. I'd like to thank you guys for watching my videos. Encourage you to subscribe. Invite you to head over to the howtoautomotive.com website for more valuable videos like this. And I'd like to thank you again for watching.